Alright guys, welcome back to Algebra 1. This is the last lesson of the week. This should cover everything that you've got. Rationalizing two-term denominators, page 293 if you're in my class. And the last video I posted up would have been simplifying or rationalizing denominators in general, which just means that you can't have a radical on the bottom of the fraction. But we only did them where there was just one radical, not another party with it. So today, when we talk about rationalizing two-term denominators, what you're going to do is multiply by its conjugate. Its conjugate, it will be the same exact thing, but a different sign. So this is negative, so I will be multiplying by the positive in between there, which allows us to FOIL the two middle terms to cancel out and everything to come out of the radical. Since this is Algebra 1, we're only working with square roots today, so we don't need to worry about making any of our index in the orders of the radicals to match. They're all going to be in square roots, so we don't need to do any of that. So basically, remember, whatever you multiply the bottom by, you multiply the top by as well. And don't forget about distributive properties and multiplication. And don't worry if you're left with a radical on the top, that's allowed. Just no radical on the bottom. So if I multiply this by the conjugate, that is multiplying by 2 plus the square root of 3 on the top and the bottom. Okay? Essentially, that is a FOIL problem. If you remember, when we FOILed, if you treated these like the two FOIL parentheses, you do first, and I'm going to do the bottom. Okay, so I'll write it down here. First is 2 times 2, which makes a 4. O is the outer, which would be 2 times a positive radical 3, which would just be 2 radical 3. The I is the inside, which would be a negative radical 3 times a 2. So that's negative 2 radical 3. And then the last would be a negative radical 3 times a positive radical 3, which will give us a negative radical 9. I have not simplified that yet. I will. Okay, on the top, distributed, if this is the only thing in here, 4's got to go times this and that. So 4 times 2 is 8. This is a positive, that's a positive, this stays positive. 4 times radical 3 is just 4 radical 3. Now all I need to do is simplify that bottom. So when I simplify that, okay, let me cut it off here. Okay, a positive 2 radical 3 minus a 2 radical 3 cancels out. There's nothing there. Okay, the square root of 9 is 3. So essentially, I have 4 minus 3 left. What is 4 minus 3? It is a whopping 1. And then on the top, I still have this. And that is my answer. Okay, so that's how you rationalize a denominator with two terms. You basically FOIL it with an opposite sign by its conjugate. All right. If this was a number, another number like 2, then I could divide 2 into this and 2 into that and simplify. But 1, I don't even have to write the 1 there. I just wrote it so that you could see where it come from. All right, so now, I don't know why I feel like sectioning these off today. We're going to look at 9. Let me get a drink. My mouth is dry today. On number 9, we have a radical on the top and the bottom. Again, it does not matter if that radical on the top disappears or not. Only the one on the bottom. So I got to multiply by the conjugate, which will be radical 3 plus 1, because that's a negative 1. So exact same thing, just a different sign there. And radical 3 plus 1. And we will FOIL again. So in this case, I'll try to make it right here. On the top, if I distribute radical 3 times radical 2, that makes a radical 6. And there's no square root of 6, so it stays that way. Radical 2 times 1 will just be positive 1 radical 2, and you do not need to write that 1. You don't have to. It's not wrong if you do. It's not wrong if you don't. You just need to understand that there's always a 1. There's a 1 out here, but I didn't write it, okay? But that's where it went. All right? On the bottom, we are foiling. So I have first radical 3 times radical 3. Well, that makes, I'll do it right here so that I can simplify it right here. That makes radical 9. I hope you can see that. That makes radical 9, which the square root of 9 is 3, okay? On the outside, I have radical 3 times 1, and they're both positive, so this is positive radical 3. On the inside, I have a negative 1 times radical 3, so this is negative radical 3. And then last, I have negative 1 times a positive 1, which is a negative 1. All right, when I complete this, a positive radical 3 and a negative radical 3 cancel out. That's the whole point why we multiply by the conjugate. So those two middle terms always cancel out. They always do if you multiply by the correct conjugate. Okay, so then I'm left with 3 minus 1, which is what? 2. So this is actually, I cannot divide this inside that because they're not inside the radical, so just leave it alone. That's your answer for 9. Okay, you got that? Because I'm going to need to clear this off in order to do 17 and 20. Get a little bit of this out of the way. I'm sorry, I hate the way this paper towel sounds, but my rag was getting too filthy and just smearing things, so try not to get the board too smudgy. Alright, problem 17 is right here, and when I multiply by its conjugate, all I'm going to do is put a negative 1 instead of a positive 1. Pay attention that even though it don't look like there's a big gap there, that problem is negative. It is going to stay negative. There's one negative right there, and none of these actual whole parentheses are negative. So your answer will stay negative. And when I multiply the top, 2x times radical x would just be 2x radical x. And then 2x times negative 1 would just be negative 2x. Alright. On this one, I'm going to FOIL. Okay, on the first, radical x times radical x makes radical x squared. What is the square root of x squared? It's x. Alright. I should not have to do the I and the O. We know they're going to cancel out. So typically we should only be doing the first and the last. I've been showing you all of them so that you get it down. But that O and the I are going to cancel out every time. So really you can just do the first and the last and shorten your problem. So now I'm going to look at positive 1 times negative 1, which gives me a negative 1. And because this is a x minus 1, and that means it has to stay together as a group. It's attached by that negative sign, so it cannot go into those things because x minus 1, not just x, but x minus 1 has to go into them. So that is your answer there. Alright, so 20 is the last one. Now that you know that you can skip your O and your I, it should speed up your process and save you just a little bit of work, okay? You don't need to do this. It's going to cancel out every time. I just wanted to show you if you use the whole FOIL method that it will work in case you forget shortcuts. So on 20, we need to multiply, and I guess I need to move it over here. Somebody is hollering in the hallway. And there's only like 2 people here, so they need to hush. What we need to multiply would be radical 5 plus x. Radical 5 plus x. Okay? Now, because we have a two-term problem on top and a two-term problem on top, we will have to FOIL the top, and because they are not conjugates, they're not going to cancel out, so we have to do the whole FOIL. So in this case, we'll do the bottom first. Radical 5, I'm about to yell at these people in the hallway. Shh, sorry. Tell them to shut up. Sorry. They're in there beating and banging with a hammer and yelling. It's distracting me. So when I FOIL here on the first, I'm going to get radical 5 times radical 5, which makes radical 25. What is the square root of 25? It is 5, okay? And remember, we're skipping O and I on the bottom only. So we go to last. Negative x times a positive x is negative x squared. And for now, I leave it there. There's nothing I can do with it. But now I need to address the top. The top is a complete FOIL problem. So radical 3 times radical 5 makes radical 15. Outside would be radical 3 times x. So that is a positive x radical 3. On the inside would be negative x times radical 5, which is negative x radical 5. And on the last would be negative x times positive x, which is negative x squared. There's no square root of 15. These don't have the same thing inside the radical, so you cannot add or subtract them. And x squared has nothing to combine with, so you literally just have to write all of that. I was hoping something would cancel. And that is your completed answer. You can't do anything else with that. That's about as complicated as it's going to get today. Remember, you can skip the O and the I on the bottom part, just not on the top part. If you need to FOIL it, you have to FOIL it all the way. Have a good rest of your day, and God bless.